literally there are bulldozers and cranes and walls going up, and we're building and rebuilding, which would have made life, hosting a conference, pretty tricky when you hear beep, 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 and crashing and banging and so on. We make it more sense out of diggers and cranes than we do with some people here today. But we hope to host you back in Chicago in the years to come. And with that kind of historic look at the themes, I'd like to ask Alan perhaps to come up and talk about where we are today with the theme of strength and collaboration. And by the way, I'd like us to recognise Henry for those terrific remarks last night. I thought it was a wonderful way of setting the scene and setting the tone for this conference. I really appreciated those. Thank you. So my friend, when it comes to everything except baseball, is Alan Bain, and I'd like to thank Alan for his commitment to not just this conference, but to the Scottish American community. I don't think there's anyone who has done more for this community than Alan Bain, and we're lucky to have him here. I'm lucky to call him a friend, and please join with me and let's welcome Alan.
Well, this conference actually is 3 years in the making. Can you hear?
Yes.
3 years in the making. It started off in 2013, and we had as one of our guest speakers, a gentleman by the name of David Alfred, who runs the Tattoo, and he gave an inspired, told an inspiring story of how the Tattoo was asked to go to Mongolia. They wanted to have a presence of the Tattoo. So he decided, rather than just going as the Tattoo, he would go as Scotland. So he took the international sort of office, he took the government, he took the military, etc. with him. And while there, the Mongolian government realized that they were talking with a very senior delegation. And one of the things that Scotland needs is Kashmir. So they decided to bypass their Chinese agent and deal directly with Scotland. And this to me was a great example of how collaboration works. And I've seen that in our own instance. You know, in New York with our parade, we work with the St. Andrews Society, the Caledonian, Clan Campbell, and we have worked for a number of years together, since 2002, in fact, putting on the parade, and it has grown as a result of that collaboration. So my hope for this weekend is that we can explore ways in which we can work more effectively with each other for mutual benefit. I was talking last night, and I have this sort of concern. I should just give a little background. I'm first generation here. I came out here as a 17-year-old initially, then I went to law school here. And I was my parents were Scottish, but everything about me was England. Other than my parents. But what happened when I got here in 1991, I got a letter from the American Scottish Foundation saying that it was in trouble. And what stunned me was my reaction to that. And I said, no, that's impossible. A Scottish organization in trouble, but what can we do? So that's how I got involved. And the reason I really appreciated the American Scottish Foundation is its mission. It was set up by Lord Malcolm Douglas Hamilton in 1956, and it was going to have a foot in both territories. The board was set up in New York, but in Scotland he had a committee of elders, if you will, that were advisors to the foundation. And they were very much cross-transatlantic in its orientation. And that's something that we have continued to foster. And that's where I see a whole host of opportunities for us to work together. One of the papers that came out of 2014, we didn't run the conference as we had planned because of the referendum. The people in Scotland were very concerned about the impact of the referendum and it overshadowing the conference. So what we had was a working group, and that led to, earlier this year in March, the Building Bridges Conference in Edinburgh. And that was a very, very powerful moment. And one of the speakers was a gentleman that I had encountered many years ago, Kingsley Aikens, when he was running the American Ireland Fund. And he has subsequently moved on to form a company, Diaspora Matters, that focuses exclusively on diaspora issues for governments. And his speech at that conference was very powerful. I don't have the speech, but he did send me his blog, 25 Reasons Why the Diaspora Matters for Scotland. And I have that as a handout to look at. And I will refer to it as we go on in the process. So my hope is that, as Gus has mentioned, that come Sunday, we will sit down and really think concretely how we can actually work together for mutual benefit. That would be, to me, the most pleasing thing of all, because as was being discussed last night, from my perspective, what I've seen, and I'm involved with several different American Scottish organizations, the infrastructure that sustains us is a lot more fragile than I think people recognize, certainly Scotland recognizes. So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope to have a great conference and that on Sunday we will come up with a plan that will take us down the road for the future. Thank you.
I would now like to ask Maggie if she'd like to address the gathering.
Good morning, everybody. I have not been here before, so you have to bear with me while I try to understand the procedure. Collaboration. I was asked. After I initially registered for this, I received a questionnaire. One of the questions was, I'm paraphrasing it. Do you believe that Scots can work together? And that's where the collaboration comes in. And my answer now, after thinking about it, is yes, they can if they care enough. And the reason I say that is I'd like to give you some history of the Scottish Studies Foundation in Canada, which is a wonderful example of a bunch of volunteer Scot-Canadian businessmen who worked together for years in order to form the seat of Scottish Studies at the University of Guelph. So if you bear with me, I'll give you some information about the foundation and where it is now. So first of all, Guelph. The small city of Guelph is in southern Ontario, Canada, and was founded by John Galt, an immigrant from Scotland, in 1827. In the mid-1960s, the University of Guelph was formed from the amalgamation of 3 existing colleges, and the history department was launched with Dr. Stanford Reid as its first chair. Reid was anxious to find a field in which already established universities were not active, and in view of his fascination with his Scottish background, and the Scottishness of his new city, came up with the idea of Scottish Studies. Reid and his team went over to Scotland and set about purchasing rare books, documents and manuscripts, which ultimately led to Guelph building up the largest collection outside the UK, a remarkable achievement for such a young university. In 1979, another professor from the University of Edinburgh, Ted Cowan, arrived from Scotland to replace the retiring Dr. Reid as Professor of History and Chair of Scottish Studies. Cowan developed and expanded the program, embraced and enhanced outreach activities, added to the library's Scottish collection, and finally secured Guelph's reputation as the major centre for Scottish studies in Canada, if not in North America. We say it was in North America, but I'll tone that down a bit. In the mid-1980s, in order to ensure that all the work would not fall victim to potential financial cuts, Dr. Cowan encouraged a small group of volunteers to establish the Scottish Studies Foundation as a registered Canadian charity dedicated to the protection of the Scottish tradition in Canada at the academic level. The major objective was to establish a permanent chair of Scottish Studies at the University of Guelph. And they did it. And they worked together, and it happened. By 2004, the inaugural Scottish Studies Foundation chair was filled by Dr. Graham Morton. I believe many of you have met him, and he's spoken here, I think. He's now left, and we have Dr. James Fraser to replace him. But Graham is at the University of Dundee, and I visited him last year. So he's settled there with his family, are very happy. At the Foundation, we continue to fund academic scholarships in Scotland and Canada, publish the annual scholarly journal, International Review of Scottish Studies, and sponsor and organise Canadian and Scottish conferences and cultural events. I have more things to say on this, but I think that is sufficient for now. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, that was great. I would now like to ask John Alisai to come to the lectern and introduce himself and the organization he represents.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, all.
Morning.
I'm the fellow in the program who didn't turn his picture. I was traveling. I didn't have access to the technology to send a picture. My apologies, but I did send a file. I'm the current president of COSCA, the Council of Scottish Clans and Associations. Many of you know of COSCA. It's been around since 1974, founded at Grandfather Mountain, Highland Gaines. It's kind of our home. To my board members here, very happy to see them, Charlie Sherwood, John Cherry, both newly elected to our board of trustees last year. I also passed out our newsletter. If you didn't get one, I have some more. Does everybody have one? It's called The Claymore. Not the mine, but the broadsword. We may change that name, but that's what it's been for a long time. There's name recognition here. A couple of things about COSCA. It's a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. Our core constituency is clan societies, of which there are about 130 clan society members. COSCA comes and goes, like all volunteer organizations. One of the things we're going to do is try to boost that membership this year. Individuals may also join, and there are some other Scottish groups who are members. We encourage that. I have a long involvement with my St. Andrews Society, and I'm going to encourage St. Andrews Societies to consider joining COSCA. That's a project that I've got in mind for this coming year. So that's COSCA. Its mission and its bylaws is basically promote Scottish heritage, culture, literature, music, through public education, in all the ways that that can be done. And until fairly recently, Costco was a member of the Scottish Coalition USA, pulled out in a temper tantrum. I'm fond of saying, you know, if Scots would stop pissing on each other, we could rule the world. And pardon my French, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. Both back home and in this country, Scots practice the time-honored tradition of winners and losers. There's got to be a winner, there's got to be a loser within the group. We have to change that, and I think we're all here because we believe that's got to change, and it can change. And maybe economic circumstances and some other things to finally get us to change it. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit of that later on. But you will see in the newsletter a letter from Sir Malcolm McGregor, who happens to be my chief and a wonderful guy, those of you who know him, very pro-American, spent a lot of time here. His father was stationed here during the 70s, and Malcolm was a teenager, spent some time here, loves America, and comes whenever he can. So the Standing Council represents the chiefs in Scotland, and Costco represents the clan societies. That's a natural relationship. We've been working on that for a number of years. My predecessor started that relationship, building that relationship. I'm working on it. We're very close with this Malcolm. He thinks it's very important to his organization to have that partnership, and we think it's very important. How do we make that work? Chiefs come here all the time, but we want to be a little bit more strategic about that. He's encouraging the chiefs of some of the smaller clans and the lowland families who don't get a lot of press attention. It's not Clendonald, it's not the Campbells, not the McGregors, but those are very important historic families in Scotland, and they have chiefs too. And we're encouraging them to travel to America, and a number of them are doing that. We had a couple last year, we have a couple this coming year. So that's something we're working on, so that Scots better understand Scottish Americans, and we better understand them. They are our cousins, and that's a word I use very purposefully. You will see an article in a column I wrote for the Scots Heritage magazine. I think it's out now. And they kind of watered it down and took the teeth out of it because they had to reduce the length of it, but they took the guts out of it. We're going to put the whole article on our website. And my title was, what do Scottish Americans really want from their cousins in Scotland? They didn't use that title, and they kind of took some of my points, which were Kingsley Aiken's points, out, because I think a lot of people in Scotland don't get it. We are part of the family. We want a seat at the table. We want to be heard. We want to contribute. We really want to contribute. But we want respect, understanding, collaboration. And I think we all believe in that. There are examples of it, but there's plenty of room for improvement. So that's why I'm here. Costco has not been a co-sponsor before, although others of our officers have attended in the past. And I think it's important that we raise our profile, that we are not just East Coast. I mean, I'm from Washington. There's lots of Scots in the Mid-Atlantic. There's lots of Scots elsewhere, too. So we're a national organization, and I think that means we need to go around the country and participate in things like this. And we intend to do more of that. We have a limited budget, volunteers like everybody else, but to the extent we can, we're going to do that. And that's, I think, probably it for now. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I appreciate the comments, but I'm a little confused. Here at St. Andrew's Society, we've never experienced any controversy, any winners, losers. Thank you. Before we continue to Alan Bain, remarks from the Scottish government, does no willing to add something to the
Thanks, Michael. You know, I was just thinking, as John was talking there, one of our dear friends and a member of the board of Costco, Paul McWilliam, on the subject of collaboration in the Scottish community, always said to me, you know, the Scots are the only people who, you could take one member of a Scottish community. Lock one Scotsman in a cupboard and he'd still come out with a black eye. But straight through collaboration, I think COSCA is a good example, and each one of our organisations clearly demonstrates that Scots, wherever they go, do collaborate. And I think it's just a matter of raising the dialogue and understanding each other to find how we can do it better. And one way of doing that is to host this conference. And I didn't thank Fred and Mickey earlier. I do apologise. Thanks very much to both of you. And I also didn't point out Alan Garraway, the chairman of my board, who I'm delighted is here with me. Another way we can do it is to find out what we all think. And I'm grateful to Bob Giles for sending out the survey that Maggie mentioned and made reference to earlier. And if you could, Bob, just give us a kind of bird's eye view of what that survey told us about, and then we can move into Alan's presentation and get back on the agenda.
Yes. Hello. Okay. I did the Survey Monkey survey this week. If you've ever, how many people have used Survey Monkey before? Okay, some of you have. We're going to bring it up a little bit later in our social media discussion, and what it is, how to use it, and how to use it as a tool in social media. But I threw this together very quickly this week. And we had 34 invitations to participate. Unbelievably, 26 people participated. So that's a fairly good sample of this group. I mean, normally you don't get that kind of sample. But a little bit of fun with this, of course. And what we found out, the two questions were, should we collaborate? And do you find that that's going to be something that's even possible? And over 90%, I think it was 91%, said yes, Scots should try to collaborate to solve common problems. So that's a really inspirational and upbeat way to start this whole thing. We had a couple of people who said, well, Scots have a great difficulty working together. Maybe it would work. Okay, so there's just a little bit of slight hesitation here in this group. I'm not going to identify who those people are. You know who you are. And nobody said it's impossible, which is really good. Go to the next slide, if you would. And that's not the next slide.
Come on, Bob, work with it. Work with it, Bob.
Oh, look at this. This is great. By the way, the Survey Monkey, it takes all the data and it creates these great graphics for you. You just have to make sure that it's up there. Okay. Anyway, and then it gives you the total thing. So it was almost 92% who said that yes, it is possible for us to work together. And you want to go to the next one? Go faster. Okay. And we found out that, go to the next slide here, that 91% uses social media, which is great. There's 9% who do not use social media, and I think they'll benefit by today's social media workshop. And the kind of things that we use a lot of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and there's others that you folks listed too. We'll get to that too. A lot of us go for funding or seeking sponsorships. Some don't, and I only wonder if maybe they haven't tried, because we're all looking for money. We're all looking for ways of funding our various activities. So that was interesting too. Okay, that's it. A lot of this is going to be used today in other groups, but it was a fun exercise. The most interesting, of course, is the very first one, that we all feel to a great extent that it's possible to do what we're out seeking to do today. So that's the good news.
I would now like to invite Alan Bain back to the lecture to deliver the message from the Scottish government. Alan.
presentation. I have a presentation from the Scottish Government, which we'll put up on the screen, but I'm not going to read it. It's available to you. But I thought I would talk to it from the perspective of how our relationship, that is the ASF relationship, is with the Scottish Government and Visit Scotland. These are, I think, relationships that are in formation. As you know, there is a Scottish Affairs Office in Washington, D.C., which is now, Dominic Jank is in charge of that. I think he's been with us for just over a year. And Kate Perkins is his 2IC. And I have to say, from a somewhat concerning beginning, I have begun to recognize Donnie. He's a man of strong opinions, but he is actually, we have found, willing to listen. And if he feels that the point of view has substance, he will actually act upon it. I give you, as an example of this, you may recall that Scotland now has themed years. This is the year of food and drink. And I was very excited by that thought because it's a theme that we could embrace here by having Scottish menus, foods, drink, using those in our own communities to promote ourselves as well as Scotland. But when I set off to Visit Scotland, who was running it, which sort of gives you a tip-off. It's not SDI or Scottish Enterprise, it's Visit Scotland that's running the food and drink. It was basically a tourism measure directed only to Scotland. And I found that very, very disappointing and short-sighted on the part of Scotland, that they wouldn't consider that we might have an interest and an ability to support that initiative here. And so I got in touch with Donnie Jack and I said, listen, I find this very disappointing, and I think it's, it doesn't reflect well on Scotland. And he agreed. And so he has put together a series of kind of cooking shows that we can all access. It's on the website of the Scottish Government Office. And we can use those to go around to whomever we choose, restaurants, etc., people that we know that would put on a Scottish event. So that was, as I say, very encouraging to me. The other area that he has been less disposed to change his mind is on the subject of games. And I think this is, again, reflects a lack of understanding on the part of Scotland to what the games actually accomplish. So we volunteered on behalf of Visit Scotland to go to games, and I learned a term of art that you might just want to know in case it creeps into the vocabulary somewhere. KPI. The Scots in Visit Scotland have to meet KPIs, key performance indicators, and it's a box-ticking exercise, basically. And that's worrisome, I find. Now, we went to the Chicago Games, we went to the Pleasanton Games, we went to the games up in Canada, Fergus, and Heather was at several of them. And what we found was there was real interest in travel to Scotland, which they don't believe. They have it in mind that the Americans don't have passports. So it doesn't make sense to them to go to games. But one of the points mentioned in Kingsley Aiken's article is soft power, and that's something that Scotland has in abundance. It has very, very good cultural organisations, heritage organisations, and they open doors. And one of the case studies that we may touch upon, with thanks to the relationship that we have with Gus and his organisation, was bringing the Kelpies to New York. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Kelpies, but that was a massive, massive hit. I mean, really made the news in New York, which is not easy to do. And the Falkirk Council, who were responsible for bringing them, actually, they capitalized on that and are still capitalizing on it because they've just come back to us. So they want to do a second go around with some of the organizations that they made relationships with in New York the last time they were here. So they're going to be running a conference in Scotland. They're going to invite the people that they met here in New York back to Scotland. So there are a lot of things that we can do. As I say, we tend to get word in New York that things are happening, and I would like to see one of the things come out of this is kind of a list of people that would like to be kept advised of groups, cultural, whatever it is, that are going to be available. Because one of the things that Scotland did do that was very smart, they now have a touring grant. They realize it doesn't make sense to travel an exhibit or a group over just for one venue, that multiple venues make sense. As an example, I just learned yesterday, one of the things we were asked to do by the Landmark Society in New York, which is celebrating its 50th birthday this year, was to do something in recognition of that. So we decided to do a program called The Scots Who Built New York. Well, I was stunned. Our involvement as builders and financiers goes back to the 17th century. And it's a very interesting subject, so much so that other people have joined forces giving us information. And that now is going to travel to Boston, I think, in May. And Gus, we discovered that there's a lot of work done by Charles Redding Mackinnon. No, excuse me, not Charles Redding Mackinnon. The builder of the University Club in Chicago for the World's Fair. So maybe we want to do one on that subject. But anyway, these are the the kinds of opportunities that arise. And so my point is, if you are running a festival, games, to take on board the fact that there is great interest, and I think one of the things that we could do better is, instead of just having a Visit Scotland tent, is have a mini Scottish village with genealogy and other subject matters. We should have a travel agency, so that there's a complete package of people that are interested can actually take advantage of it. And one of the things that's just about to happen, Delta is coming in with a major opening of its airline to end direct flights as of May 26th, I think, next year. So they may be open to sponsor some games, because they've got good connections around the country coming through New York. So that's basically the point is the government is willing to work, and I think it behooves us to reach out to them and to demonstrate how we can be helpful to them. And I think particularly going through Kate Perkins, you really find a good advocate to get to Darling and get him to go on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Before we segue into our first panel one, real life